the main talk tonight. I'm going to do a breakdown of last Tuesday's election. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of good news. I'm going to end it with some bad news because that's just, I'm a balanced guy, but we're going to start off with the good news. And again, as everyone here knows, this guy is now the governor of Virginia, or at least governor-elect, Youngkin. This is just kind of, an illustration of the way it all went down. What's very interesting is this here, the Panhandle of Virginia. Donald Trump was winning this area by like 80-20, and that was kind of unheard of. Like that's how, again, I remember election night 2020, like all the other numbers came in. It was so far beyond what we were expecting. What was incredible is that Youngkin kept this up down here, while also making gains up here. Again, he didn't win Loudoun County, which was kind of the focal point of a lot of the educational scandals out there and things like that. But again, major gains. We have 9-point swing in this county, 10, 11 points. Many of these high population counties, major swings from +9 Biden to +9 Youngkin. That's an 18-point swing right there. You've got up and down the board, 16-point swings, 15-point swings. I mean, this is what was going on that night. And to be honest with you, I got this one wrong. I have been very pessimistic for Virginia for several years now. A big part of that is just the population swell we've seen in Northern Virginia. It's also one of those areas where we've seen a very high number of, I think no state in the country has had a higher increase of college-educated voters, particularly like secondary education, higher education voters. And again, that I think is one of the major trends electorally for the left. But Virginia, again, winnable. And what's also interesting, what's important to understand here, is that if we're comparing 2017's race to 2021, it's not like Democrats didn't show up to vote. In 2017, blackface Governor Northam, he got 1.4 million voters. McAuliffe got almost 1.6 million voters. Okay, so it wasn't like these people didn't show up. What just happened is that we had a lot of people that don't vote normally. Those voters that vote in the presidential campaign but don't vote in the governor's race, they showed up this time. And that's what made the difference here. And that's what led to Youngkin, again, winning by over 50% of the vote, even with a third-party candidate involved. I think it was a Princess something, or a Libertarian candidate, I don't know. But luckily a non-factor. The only race on the board wasn't simply the governor's race. Currently, the Republicans have now tied in the House of Delegates, which we lost last campaign cycle. And there's currently 2 seats in a recount right now. The Republicans have the advantage in both of these races. It's less than half a percentage point. But so again, there's a chance for having a full 2-seat advantage in the House of Delegates. I believe it is in the 2023 cycle where Virginia Senate seats are then on the ballot, which again, so there's a chance to completely take back over the Virginia House. And of course, if you look at other statewide races, we have a new lieutenant governor, Winsome Sears.
Yes.
This low-res photo came from MSNBC. I did not do that, so just take that for what it's worth. Surprise, coming from MSNBC, a low-res photo of a black Republican woman. And then we have a new attorney general as well. And this is interesting, too, because like going into it, this was not a given. There's a lot of people that thought that Youngkin might win because McAuliffe had done so much to shoot himself in the foot. But instead, a clean sweep. And the Attorney General's race in particular is important because if we think about how much attention has been placed on criminal justice related issues, here is a blue state rejecting that for an Attorney General. Keep that in mind for a slide later down. And if we think about why this happened, right? Well, first and foremost, it's Joe Biden. Joe Biden is underwater. I believe he is he's underwater with Virginia voters, as he is with most of the country. Again, when you're dealing with Northern Virginia as the large population center here, this is a big deal. Virginia typically is a lot more forgiving of very bad, evil politicians in most areas. So again, this continues to be a drain. But of course, kind of the major issue out there is the education front. This is the head of America's Teacher Union, the person responsible for shutting down schools throughout the country this past year, doing everything they can to keep them closed, and doing nothing to punish teachers that would, talk about the need for their kids to be online and masking and while going on vacation, right? This was the closing gambit here that the McAuliffe campaign brought out. We're going to bring out the teachers union lady and go campaign around that. Doesn't really quite work well. Of course, also the critical race theory issue. is kind of the big deal. I love that issue evolving was fun because it started off by saying, there was no critical race theory to, oh, well, critical race theory is just a college you take in college, a class you take in college, to, oh, well, critical race theory good, right? There's various different lines. And of course, what really made the difference here was the school board, right? You had parents go up to the school board and got involved. You had them expose what was going on through their classrooms. You had parents talking about their kids coming in saying, Mommy, was I born bad because I was born white? You had the issue with the bathroom situation in Loudoun where someone was assaulted. There's kind of more details than that one, but you had, again, just the entire insanity baked in. McAuliffe doubled down on it with the idea that, oh, well, parents have no role to teach your kids. The parents have no right to dictate the curriculum to teach your kids. Surprise, surprise, parents didn't like that. Corey DeAngelis, who's a great school choice policy guy out there, he's now kind of the top of the world in this field right now, he made a great point where now the parents are one of the most important special interest groups in American politics. And this should have gone without saying, but Democrats apparently need to get their mind on that. There's a great line by Michael Malice that said, it talks about how most insidiously socialists view your kids as their own as well. And that's kind of what was at play here. And this was a big stop to that. I think this is something that's not going to go away. Here in Florida, there's a big effort to make sure that we don't simply have nominal Republicans in school boards, but strong conservatives in school boards. We're still recruiting candidates in Bay County. If you know anyone, please let me know. So this is one of the major issue drivers that made the difference in this campaign. And what's also interesting on this is in September of 2021, voters that made education the #1 issue, told pollers that, McAuliffe was winning with those voters by 33 points. September 2021. By the time it was over, that was the opposite way. Okay? Again, that's what goes. There's this old saying in politics that a gaffe is accidentally saying what you really mean. Terry McAuliffe had quite a gaffe. But of course, we didn't simply have Virginia. We also had a very tight race in New Jersey. This was, I think by the time said and done, I think Murphy ended up winning by a little over 2 points against Ciatelli. This I think is interesting. The tax issue is a major issue in this one. There's no state in the union taxed more than New Jersey. That include, which is saying a lot considering its neighbor and a few other places. The interesting thing, though, is that this race got no attention. It got no money from the RNC. I didn't know who this guy was until 2 weeks ago, and I'm kind of a nerd. That kind of speaks to, if you had a more attention given this race, given how close this margin is, I think that this was a underperforming candidate, to be honest. And I'm sure Jack's a nice guy, but I think he was kind of an underperforming candidate for the moment. He was not Youngkin. But still, we swapped it out, and what's interesting...
He got no national support.
At all. No national support. None of these movements.
Support.
That
If he
should tell you
did,
a lot about the
he'd have won.
Republican Party.
Yeah, we were right there. No one took this race seriously. If we look at the polling beforehand, this is another example of polling error. The Real Clear polling average was just about 8 percentage points, and that's with the best polling group was Trafalgar, which the very serious polling people always love to make fun of, but they just keep getting it right. Funny how that happens. But they had Murphy +4. That kind of lowered the average there. It even been higher. So again, another example of polling error in New Jersey. And the reason this happens, more often than not, there's some polls here that are pure propaganda. You see this pop up in the Florida race all the time. But more often than not, it's about modeling. Because when you have this high turnout race, it's very difficult to model. You don't know what voters are going to come out. And so basically these polls become as useful as they are here. That is something, again, to keep in mind when we're looking at polls going forward. And again, New Jersey is a state that has been trending the wrong way. This is congressional districts. It's kind of apples and oranges, I grant you, but this was the most convenient map I found, so we're going to roll with it. But this is the way the congressional districts have been going the last 2 election cycles. Very blue now. Now, again, major gains made throughout the state. We picked up 6 assembly seats, 2 Senate seats in the state, among with other gains. And of course, our favorite new Republican state senator, Mr. Edward Durr, King Edward I of New Jersey, truck driver, lives in a very modest home, promises to continue being a truck driver, which is very, very good. I hope he keeps that promise. Again, he spent, I think, a little about $200 in his race, most of it to Dunkin' Donuts coffee. And the great thing is he's just a normal guy. And he was asked afterwards, "What are you going to do?" He's like, "I don't really know yet. I'm going to go there. I'm going to figure it out." There's nothing wrong with that. And we need more of these kind of normal people in politics. I'm a big Jacksonian guy. The opponents of Jackson would kind of make fun of the fact that all the Jacksonians in office were country bumpkins. Well, no, there's something to be said, particularly with how royally all the professionals have screwed this thing up. We could perhaps use some more truck drivers. So again, God bless Ed Durr, and I just really hope it doesn't disappoint. Always a possibility, but right now I'm very happy. He didn't just simply beat the Senate Majority Leader in New Jersey. He beat the longest serving Senate Majority Leader. King Ed. But what's also important here, though, is that it wasn't simply these obvious races. There are other ballots and other issues on the ballot across the country. Here we have a Texas State House seat. I believe it's a majority Hispanic district. If I remember correctly off the top of my head, I think it's a 75% Hispanic district. A Republican won for the first time in a very, very long time. So again, another one of those sort of trends that we saw. In no areas of the country in 2020 did Trump better overperform over 2016 numbers than those border counties in Texas. This continues that trend. One of my favorite races, Seattle, the city attorney race. In Seattle, a city so crazy that the mayor's race featured a far-left progressive nut running against someone who looked like a computer-generated a caricature of the left. I mean, literally, it was this woman in a Mao dress. Like that was the race in the mayor's race in Seattle 2020. We now have a Republican elected to a city attorney's position. Do you think people, even in these very, very blue areas, are perhaps tired of prosecutors not prosecuting, robbing the CVS on a daily basis, right? Or those little sort of things. In Seattle, I think it was like 51% of the vote here. Big win. Not only that, though, Pennsylvania statewide race. We maintain 2 Supreme Court seats. Pennsylvania, one of those states, are going to be very, very important. Minneapolis rejected getting rid of the police department. Surprise, surprise. That's more popular on Twitter than it is in real life. Again, and another important thing here is, again, agenda items of the left failing on the ballot. So it's not like you have a bad candidate. It's that voters are saying your ideas suck. Again, this is what reasons for optimism. Another great race. Let's bring us to the city of Buffalo, New York. Last spring, we had a Democratic primary. A Democratic socialist endorsed by AOC and the like wins the primary. The incumbent, who is a Democrat, I'm not trying to say this is a good guy, but the incumbent mounts a write-in campaign and ends up winning the write-in campaign significantly over the Democrat who is on the ballot itself, right? It's difficult to get people to spell the right name, right? This is a major feat. It doesn't happen that often. Unfortunately, the last time it happened in a big race was Lisa Murkowski. I kind of wish they would have Murkowski's a name. I wish they would have misspelled. But neither here nor there. But again, the Democrat lost to a write-in campaign, and this is where things get really, really fun. In the aftermath, you now have Democrats upset because this guy, the mayor, is on the DNC. And they're now saying, how dare this person trump the will of Democratic voters by running against the woman that won the primary. They can't use the race card in this one because of who he is. But so they say, oh, how could he dare run against a working woman? How dare he? Well, it's because he knew where his people were, right? Like the city of Buffalo really didn't want a Democratic socialist. So again, there's also a turmoil that they're going to continue to deal with for a while now. Now, the problem is this. We have a great Tuesday. The Republicans have all the momentum. We have. Now, who do you think was the biggest benefactor of Tuesday? It was perhaps Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin, who now gets to go to leadership and their own people and say, look, you're listening to all these crazies over here. People don't want that. Again, they just lost a write-in to a write-in candidate. Of course, what do Republicans do though? We give the game away, right? We have a vote on an infrastructure bill, and you get 13 Republicans vote for the spending bill, $1.2 trillion in spending, in order to fix the racist roads that Pete Buttigieg is really, really concerned about, right? And this gets to the concern, because if we're dealing with if we're on the precipice of a Republican revolution, if we have half the swing, so again, Virginia was a 12-point swing. New Jersey was a 14-point swing over 2022 numbers. Let's say, okay, that's a little bit unique. If you have half of that, then not only does Arizona come back and play, not only does Georgia come back and play, perhaps a new supervisor of elections there will help as well. But then you start talking about Nevada. You start talking about New Mexico. You start talking about New Hampshire. You start talking about major, and of course you talk about Michigan, you talk about Pennsylvania, you talk about Ohio, you talk about Wisconsin. But what's the point if the Republicans are then going to give the game away, right? And this is what we have to enforce. This is what we have to do, is that we cannot simply allow our great gains, that the grassroots, the people that Ed's going to train, we cannot let the grassroots victories then be taken and utilized by these 13 people willing to make make deals with the enemy. Now, of those 13 senators or congressmen that voted, some of these are already dead men walking. You've got Representative Gonzalez here, who is even a worse congressman than he was a wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. You've got Adam Kinzinger here, who represents MSNBC in the GOP. You got Fred Upton, who's got a very interesting race going on. Tom Reed here from New York, he's already out the door. But all of these people have to go, top to bottom. I think you're going to end up seeing, this is a woman from New York. I think she's going to end up getting a challenge now. Alaska, they always love as much government spending as they can get, so I don't know how that's going to go. But all of these people, they've got to go. But more importantly, though, is that they need to be punished right now. We don't have to wait for the election cycle. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by treating these people the same way Republicans in Congress treated Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Right.
You take them from their committees. You strip them down. You take away the power. Hey, I'd be in favor of kicking them all out of the caucus. We were not in the majority anyway, right? It doesn't matter at this point. These spending bills are the only thing you're going to get through the Senate anyway. Their party affiliation no longer matters. Kick them out of the caucus right now. What's stopping us? Well, our good friend, Kevin McCarthy. This is the issue. Again, this keeps being the running pattern here, right? This was my concern about Tallahassee with the vaccine mandates and that sort of stuff. We have a lot of people in leadership positions that do not care about the constituents as much as they care about the corporate donors. Kevin McCarthy gets a lot of money from Google. He gets a lot of money from Facebook. I don't know if he's still roommates with Frank Luntz or not, but and to be fair, the way that he would justify it is, I need this money to win these races in these moderate districts and things like that, right? That's the argument, and that's a perfectly fine argument. The problem doesn't work. Because if you're not going to enforce the vote, if you're not going to whip the people on your side to maintain party loyalty, well then who cares if they get elected? Who cares about winning these moderate seats? Because they're going to sell us out. You know who doesn't lose this? Nancy Pelosi. If you read John Boehner's book, which I don't encourage anyone here doing, he's an interesting guy, but I'm not out there advocating that. But in the book, John Boehner talks about how much he respected Nancy Pelosi because she would use the carrot and the stick. You reward the people that make those hard votes, but then you also punish the people that fold on these hard votes. John Boehner didn't do that. John Boehner respected her. He wouldn't emulate her. Kevin McCarthy isn't as smart as John Boehner. And so this is, going forward, the number one issue that we need to ask every single Republican member of Congress is the first thing they do is to come in and they vote on who's going to lead them. Who's going to be the next Speaker of the House?
Donald Trump?
So that's one possibility out there. That's Matt Gaetz' idea. He might be busy campaigning by that point. Well, we shall see. But I don't know who the answer to that is, but I do know one answer. It shouldn't be Kevin McCarthy.
No.
Because again, he fails at the job. And he's not even good on TV. I mean, the whole reason he wasn't Speaker of the House when Paul Ryan was because he couldn't manage to go through an election cycle without putting his foot in his mouth, right? He's not a very smart man. We're not sending our best to our leadership positions, apparently. Now, other positions here, Jim Jordan is someone who has fought the fight. I'd be a big supporter of him. He's the person I really would like to see. But this is the number one issue. This is something that if you ever run into Neil Dunn, this is the first thing to ask him. Would you vote against Kevin McCarthy? We cannot be representing this man if we want to have, if we want to utilize the election to our advantage. Because if we look back, the phrase Republican Revolution, I'm sure it's been used in the past, but I really, what brings to mind is the 1996, it was the 94 victories of Newt Gingrich and the old Clinton days, right? And Newt Gingrich, for all of his sins, he was an ideas man. He had a positive policy agenda that he was trying to get through. He wasn't there to make nice, which Bill Clinton learned, right? And he was able to impose discipline. We need a Newt Gingrich again. We need a new contract for America. And particularly when we're looking at right now, when for the first time in a very, very long time, obviously 08, 09, those are very, very tough. I don't want to make light of that. Here in Bay County, we had a very, very difficult 2018. For the first time, Americans' quality of life is declining. Material well-being is going down. And when that happens, people are angry. And if we do not do something to satisfy that anger, if we simply put forward an agenda that doesn't do something that impacts that, then we're going to lose that faith of your average American. Those people voting for the first time are not going to come out a second time. Those Trump voters who don't give a damn who this person is, and they care about Trump, and they believe the party is heading in the Trump direction, they're not going to show up. And so the biggest threat to this country right now is not the Democratic Party. It is a Republican Party that refuses to act when it has the power to do so. And that is the threat that we saw in Tallahassee. That threat was avoided because of the leadership of Ron DeSantis and people like Anthony Sabatini and Tucker Carlson. That is what we must instill in D.C. And it just so happens Anthony Sabatini is running for Congress, so that's a good parallel there, right? But that's what we need. We need fighters. We need people willing to step on toes, and we need to enforce discipline here. Because all this great election stuff, it's all great the night of, it's a whole lot of fun. But it's the act of governing that makes lasting change. And it's only by the act of governing that we can actually save an America for our children. That being said, if you have any questions about the election cycle, I do have a few other points afterwards, but yes.
I got a question about the special session that's going to occur
Okay.
on November the 15th. Are they voting on House Bill 75, or is this I'm kind of confused about exactly what's going to happen during the special session, and is it going to be able to impact people in time to save them from the mandate?
That is a very good question. So all those votes, or all those bills are going to be treated as separate bills. They aren't kind of put together as kind of an omnibus bill, so each one of those will be voted on. There will be amendments. It's possible this thing could get neutered. Like, this is not the time to have the mission accomplished sign. We're currently in a position of strength, but not until it gets signed that comes to law. So that, again, we have to keep on top of it, and don't worry, I will. And when it comes to the people that are already hurt, this I think is something of a glaring issue in the bill. There is no retroactive aspect there. For example, Disney's already purged most of their workforce on this issue. Again, you've had nurses that have Ascension Sacred Heart, one of the biggest offenders in this. They're still out. There's nothing that could theoretically. I don't know if there's any provision that prevents forward discrimination on this issue. Can you, as an employer, ask about vaccine status when it comes to hiring? I presume you probably still can. There's nothing in there that bans it. That's, again, one of those little touches there that I think would strengthen it. When this will come into effect is a secondary
next
issue
question.
as well, because usually there's kind of a month or there's a time delay
Right.
into this.
So it's not gonna help all the people who have to get that shot by, because it's January the 8th,
Yes, the Biden mandate. Now, currently, that goes into the other side of it. Yeah, the Supreme Court has that. It's stalled at the moment. There will be lawyers. If you have any, we've got a lawyer in the room, or at least a lawyer in training. He would know some of this better than I would. But this is going to play through the courts. But again, right now, this will not help the people right now. I mean, I've got a friend that's he is a contractor with essentially Sacred Health. His timing kind of works out well because he's about to have a baby. Going to have a little bit of time there to kind of give him a little bit of a kick down the road. But yeah, there's still a lot of people vulnerable right now. Again, I would like to see something. I would like to see something stronger on that, but we are not there yet. Now the question is, then goes if they have this power taken away, will that change any of the practices going between now and then? We're already starting to see, in terms of the Biden mandate side of things, Southwest, for example, blinked. We have seen large corporate chains hold off, in part looking for legal clarity and other things. I think that the labor shortage issue is always one of those things that's playing a role here. This is another area where, if we're looking for justifications for doing this sort of stuff, the vaccine mandate issue is one of the big supply chain issues of the day, right? If you don't have people manning the trucks,
yeah.
that's one of the issues there. So that's one of the things that's so frustrating about this, is that given the degree to which we're already seeing disruptions to the economy as a whole from these vaccine mandates, where is the Chamber of Commerce? Why is the Chamber of Commerce siding with a very, very small minority of ideologically driven corporations over all of the businesses that are impacted by the logistics hiccups?
Right. They don't represent small business anymore.
And then it goes to the Florida Chamber. That goes to the Bay County Chamber. The Bay County Chamber sides with Ascension Health over all of the businesses here. And think about this. One of the most who saved us? Yeah, who saved us after Hurricane Michael? It was Florida Electric. It was the linesmen that went up in the polls and fixed all this sort of stuff. And all those trucks on parade that watching them go over the bridge night by night. Those people are now facing termination, and that the guy that's the big head of Florida Electric is a big donor to DeSantis. So so this is exactly the sort of things where we got to start holding our corporate America, particularly the state of Florida, to a higher level, because this is where the power lies. And again, you've heard it from me before. If you're here last month, again, if we simply allow the left to privatize out the enforcement of the policy of the Biden regime, then a lot of the tools that Republicans rely upon are not going to work out. So we've got to care for our neighbors. We've got to care for our community. And again, hopefully, we'll that is going to be one of those battles that's going to come up. Again, I think that there is continually the ability to modify and amend the proposed policy. You're going to have, within the case of someone like Anthony Sabatini, you're going to have someone keep pushing and pushing and pushing from the right. The problem is that it kind of undermines him when it comes to the sausage making aspect of it. For example, the bill that Alex Adrande is supporting in terms of removing the outdated legislation about vaccine mandates generally. That was originally a Sabatini bill. He gave up that bill because he knows if it has Sabatini as the main sponsor, it's not going to get done for leadership, because the leadership would rather punish Anthony Sabatini than punish moderate Republicans. Do with that information as you will. But he's giving that to Adrande. That's great. That'll get done. So he'll be making a lot of noise. It's up to where does particularly the representatives of plus 43 Trump areas like Bay County. This is where they need to be interjecting more teeth. We've already got far more than I thought we were going to get. We need to keep. Don't stop. Because again, what we see within this issue is kind of what the left does. Is that DeSantis comes up with a big ask, and it was an ask that was far more than a lot of the policymakers were comfortable with, and then you negotiate from that big ask, right? And so you get 2/3 of the way there, and you're still much better than what Kevin McCarthy would have gotten in that same situation, right? And so hopefully, when this process comes out, if we can just move that bill a little bit further, we get that fines a little bit higher. If we improve the ability for employees to sue, because that is a part of it. There is a legal aspect within that bill for employees to sue. Obviously, that's easier said than done, the amount of cost and time and all that sort of stuff. I'm not trying to say that's a perfect solution there, but if we can fortify that to be retroactive in this, I think that would be one of those major moves. Perhaps with, what you ideally want, there would be some sort of leeway period. You wouldn't want to necessarily be too vindictive, perhaps behind, because again, one of the things within this is that a business, mandating vaccines like January 2021, from a personal liberty standpoint, that's icky to me. I don't like that. I've rejected it to my core. But our understanding of this thing was different in January 2021 than it is in November 2021, right? Bill Gates just this afternoon was talking about how the vaccine actually doesn't help with transmission at all, and we might need to look at other things. Like, oh, how about that, Bill Gates? It's good that you now figured out on this, right? We're seeing the degree to which, you're already now having certain countries, France today, has now made it clear that if you don't have your third booster, you will not be counted as vaccinated within the system that they have in place, right? This is not simply 2 jabs and you're done. This is, if you commit to these vaccine mandates, you are committing to a yearly process of injecting whatever the hell they tell you to inject.
Right.
This is different than January 2021. But I'm okay with giving, if an employer has found different work, whatever, there's a way. But if they're still out of work though, and they refuse to hire them back after this law, I'm all in favor of, again, Tallahassee trying to figure out mechanisms to deal with this, because there's far too many people that have been vulnerable.
Why couldn't DeSantis have just made an executive order?
Because stop anything.
So because Abbott did that, right?
Yes.
And hasn't stopped anything.
Yeah. Iowa hasn't stopped. So what DeSantis could have done was go for the press release. And this again, I keep talking about how great DeSantis is, but it's because he continues to overperform my highest expectations. The easy thing would have been to do an executive order, to have it shut down by the courts, and then be very, very angry on Fox News, Tucker Carlson, saying, he's not doing that. He didn't do that with the big tech thing. He could have had a very big, gaudy bill. The tech bill is still going through the legal process, right? But his approach there was very, very focused, and outside of a really stupid corporate loophole that Chris Sproles and others put in there that undermined the bill. That focus there, I think, is something that should be able to hold up. He's trying to not simply do things for the sake of attention. He's trying to do things that will last, and that is why you need that special session. And because he was going to do it without one. I've talked to people that were in that process. He could have done what Abbott did. And the whole reason he was dealing with Sproles and Wynton Simpson and those sort of people is because he wants this to have staying power. And again, there will be lawyers, there will be clear challenges, but they think that this is ironclad. They've been wrong before. We'll see how it plays out. But that's why an executive order, that's why this is better than a broad executive order. We've also seen, Iowa's done something similar. It also hasn't helped. I've got a state rep up there who's been pulling his hair out trying to figure out how to do it. The executive order just, it doesn't have the teeth that you need for it.
Enforcement power.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I
Yes.
have a question.
Okay.
I understand you were in Tallahassee, today's a week ago for the anti-vaccine.
I was not at the rally. John Ward was there.
Okay, John was there.
Yes.
Okay. Have you heard what kind of a turnout they had?
They had
If they had opposition?
well, they had close to 500 people there. I've heard. I've seen some. Sabatini was there. Chris Ann Hall and her husband were there. Bernie Thompson, actually here locally, was over there. A few others. And it was interesting. They were right outside the offices out there. No one came out. There were no counter protesters. But again, I think what's interesting is I think the Republican leadership underestimated the degree to which DeSantis couldn't provide cover for doing the bare minimum. I think a lot of them thought that they could convince DeSantis to do kind of just a big stand against Biden's mandates. And I think all these little grassroots demonstrations made them see that the governor's hand was much stronger than they thought. Because again, within a week, the language changed. And again, on Tuesday night, I get Alex Adrande saying we're not going to do this. Friday, Jay Trumbull, our state rep, who was quiet the entire time, Friday night, right before, he finally says, I'm against all mandates, not Biden's mandates. There was a shift in Tallahassee that week. That is important, and there's a lot of things that played into it. Okay, but I think it was demonstrations like that. I think it was the degree to which their phones were on fire. I think it was, and this is important. Rick Scott is a billionaire. Rick Scott was able to do things as governor because he paid people to punish Republicans that didn't do what Rick Scott wanted. And he was very good at it. And sometimes it was for good reasons. Sometimes it was for things I didn't like. But when Jay Trumbull, our state rep, voted against funding for Enterprise Florida and Visit Florida, a vote that I praised and supported him on, Rick Scott came down to Eastern Shipbuilding and gave a talk about how Jay Trumbull is a rich kid that doesn't understand the value of a job, and that's why he voted the way he did. And he sent out mailers criticizing Jay Trumbull for standing against Florida jobs. That's what Rick Scott did when he was governor to enforce loyalty. That's what Kevin McCarthy does not do, right? But he could do that because he was funding it. It was a parallel operation to the Florida Republican Party. Ron DeSantis is not a billionaire. He doesn't have his own private jet. Okay, Rick, he doesn't have that whole built-out apparatus. What he has is us, and we won. We did the battle for Ron DeSantis, and that's what we have to keep in mind. When all these battles, it's us calling, our state house member, calling our state senator, calling the leadership. We are the army that Rick Scott had to pay for. And we can never forget that. If we support our governor, we have to fight for him. Throughout. It's not just simply voting for him, once or twice more. It's doing it on a daily basis.
They have more integrity with the people.
Absolutely, a natural leader rather than a paid leader. So again, these are some of the differences that are happening. And rallies like that, I think, really sway the difference. Anyone else? Okay. Moving on, there's some other things worth taking note of, but I did want to share one race that's really caught my eye. This is Blake Masters. He's running for Senate in Arizona. Brilliant man. He co-wrote. He's good friends with Peter Thiel, who's a guy I have a tremendous amount of respect for. Co-wrote his book 0 to 1, which I think is a book everyone here should, if into reading, highly recommend it. He's got some great stuff out there right now. One of his biggest pushes is that the Republican Party must be the party promoting an agenda where families should be able to be supported by a one-parent household. Doesn't mean everyone needs to be, right? There's plenty of choice out there, but we need to create the economic conditions in this country to allow for one income families to thrive and prosper. And that's one of the things we don't have really since the 1970s. That goes in the Federal Reserve stuff, which will be a topic of a future conversation. But just something to keep in mind there. He also had a great ad earlier this week after the education stuff about how our public school system right now is cranking out losers. And I think there's far too much truth to that. So again, he's someone to watch. Blake Masters. He's in a primary in Arizona. I have nothing bad to say about any of the people he's running about in the primary. But again, unfortunately, there's no volume. But yeah, there you go. Love that. If you have not watched Patriot Purge from Tucker Carlson, you can get a free subscription to Fox Nation by visiting tuckercarlson.com. It's like a 90-day thing. I get no money from Tucker Carlson, so this is just an endorsement. I watched this last week, and it is powerful. It is. A lot of the things I'm very proud. We are topics that we have discussed in this meeting in the past, particularly the degree to which the issues with January 6th and the long history of the FBI stoking those sort of events. I mean, I think like the Governor Whitmer big conspiracy to kidnap her. I think BuzzFeed, that reputable right-wing publication. Identified 12 of the 14 people involved in that thing were like feds. This is their MO. The FBI very bad at stopping shootings in Las Vegas. Very good at planting terrorist attacks of their own. Something to keep in mind. So again, Patriot Purge, I highly recommend it. On Thursday, the Bay GOP will be involved in 3 Veterans Day parades. One is Panama City Beach, and Callaway. I do not have the specific details. I believe Panama City is the first one. I think it starts at 10. If you have any interest in being a part of those parades, please email the chairman of the Bay GOP, Debbie Wood, at debwood850@yahoo.com. Feel free to follow up with me afterwards if you need that again. With that being said, if no one else has any questions, I do want to thank you all for spending your Tuesday night with us here at the Republican Roundtable. Our next real meeting will be in January, hopefully once again the second Tuesday of the month, but all that's going to be up in the air as we change venues once again. I want to thank Triple J for bailing us out after Craft 850 kicked us out. But we will be continuing this next year. If you have any ideas for talks, speakers, please, I'm always open to suggestions. Yes, Charlie.
Question for our friend from the Rubio campaign. Sir, when will we see Senator Rubio here on the Panhandle for Republican issues? Because quite frankly, he has been, he's taking us for granted, and I don't think he can afford it.
So, do you mind if I-
Sure.
Yeah. I will speak on this briefly because that's been a concern that I've seen with a lot of different counties in the Panhandle. What I can say at this point is that we are going to try to get him out here as much as possible. I am the bottom guy on the totem, so I'm going to be as transparent as possible as to when he's going to be here, and I'm going to be working with Bay County GOP. I'm going to be working with the other county committees throughout the Panhandle to ensure that he's going to get here at some point, and that you guys have a good amount of time to be aware of these events and that you're able to attend them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, 3 months ago, you and I talked. You asked me to be available to write letters to the editor, and I would be contacted by somebody from the Rubio campaign. I have never been contacted by anybody from the Rubio campaign for that purpose. I have been knocking on doors and working in Republican campaigns for over 60 years. I have never seen an incumbent Republican that had such a lousy campaign or a lousy relationship with Republicans that Senator Rubio has.
Okay, so to touch on that, you may have spoken to someone else, to be completely frank. So you may have talked to
Chancellor.
Was
I'm sorry,
Chance?
sir. Okay, I apologize. Okay, all these guys with beards look the same.
With that said, I would be more than happy to sit down with you. We can go over that. I will see to it
I
that
just want to see Rubio on the Panhandle asking Republicans or being part of helping other Republicans as part of an effort. Right now, I mean, quite frankly, he is grabbing onto DeSantis's coattails in order to drag himself in so he can be a dilettante in Washington, and I don't like that.
Okay. So with that said, I will sit down with you. We will talk about that. About your original concern regarding
Okay.
and then the second thing is, I will I'm gonna let you guys know when he's gonna be around. You guys will all be open to come to anything that he's gonna have going on. Hopefully, it's going to be sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
I've been putting in requests to our scheduler to try to get him out here. With that said, again, as far as like how we're going to help, I'm going to do my best to build some grassroots operation out here so that our data our manpower can be effective in these local elections as well.
And,
We appreciate some help.
I will help.
and one point to build on that is that, you know, one of the guys higher up in the totem pole, is a guy named Matt. He visited us a couple months ago. George Norris and I sat down with him, and everything that you voiced right there, he got that from George Norris. So you know, for people even in higher position than Ed here, they know where that anger is, and one of the reasons I think
Not
they
anger, concern.
concern. Well,
I'm going to vote for Mark Rubio.
No, I agree.
Vote for him.
No, I know that comes from the best place.
I want to vote for him enthusiastically as opposed to now because he's the Republican nominee and I got to vote for him.
No, absolutely. But that same concern has been voiced up top, and one of the reasons I believe they sent Ed here is because Ed is a lot more conservative than a lot of the fieldmen within Republican circles right now, and that is why they sent him here in the Panhandle, because they are recognizing that what plays down in South Florida is not the same thing that plays up here in Panama City, and that's why I'm very excited that he's going to be here. And again, we will be working together to make sure that we do get the senator up here as much as possible.
Thank you, Phil. I'm going to call your bluff.
It's like, you should. That was the story of the night, right? We got to keep our side honest. Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I've never been here.